The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel Satan?
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
Greetings from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks and welcome to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. We're really glad you've chosen to spend a Sunday with us, or maybe a week, I don't know. Are we in your car? Are we in your ears? Are we in your office? Where are we anyway?
Did you apply some Hear Gel just to listen to us without the benefit of any external devices?
Have you fed us lately? Come on. We're starving out here in the Ozarks.
Well, it is a snowy Sunday here. For us, snowy, what we may have a quarter of an inch out there right now, which for the Ozarks is...
I think probably a little more than that. Sam was leaving, pretty nice deep marks.
Okay.
When he was out there trudging around, and he didn't seem to be bothered by it, so,
We don't get it often here. The most snow we've got since we moved here was on the day that we actually moved here, which, of course, caused all kinds of problems for the moving truck. But if wherever you are, we hope you're safe, dry, and warm, and we are glad that, and thankful that you've invited us inside your headspace. However,
open up your head hole,
Slappy, and testify. I'm about to testify. Yeah. Well, a lot going on this week in a variety of things. We've got news. We've got earth changes. We've got people who don't identify as human.
It's crazy. It is a crazy world out there. The first thing we need to address, though, is what happened in Hawaii.
Yeah. Missile attacks that aren't actually attacks by missiles aren't attacks at all. In fact, that was a story that broke. Was that yesterday morning or was it this morning?
It was yesterday morning.
Okay.
And it was a crazy 8:03, 8:05 local time in Hawaii. There were push notices sent out to phones saying that people had to take cover because there was a missile attack on its way to Hawaii. Didn't say from where, just said missile attack. Turned out that there was an HIEMA, which is the Hawaii equivalent of FEMA, Emergency Management Association, that was running a drill. And the word now is there was a press conference, where the leaders of Hawaii, the governor and the like, were addressing this problem. The push notifications went out 38 minutes later.
Yeah.
They finally got this is not... Because the original notice said this is not a drill.
Right. The announcement went out via the HIEMA notification network, basically the network that we Americans are kind of used to. We've grown up with the weekly test. In fact, when I was in radio, we had to once a week schedule a test at a random time. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test, and those annoying tones would be broadcast, and it was to check to make sure that the main stations designated for information in St. Louis, it's KMOX. In Chicago, it's probably WGN, whatever. They would be contacted by federal emergency managers, and those tones then would trigger the same tones on affiliates, subsidiary stations all throughout the country. And, so anyway, something similar to that took place in Hawaii, and people were getting text messages, and social media was hit with messages saying, this is not a drill, missiles incoming to Hawaii.
TV and radio were announcing it.
Right,
They were told, if you're in your car, pull over, get out, run to the nearest location that has some sort of covering over it, and hunker down. And people, when you tell someone to hunker down, you don't normally have that same person, okay, I'm going to keep checking Twitter to see what's going on.
Right.
Some people were doing that, but only those those who were paying attention to social media saw the recension of this. Okay, it is a drill. Sorry, we did the nose.
So the timeline went out about 8:05 a.m. local time in Hawaii, which would be about I don't know. I think we're 5 hours ahead of Hawaii here in the central time zone. Anyway, there was a routine, and should have been a routine test of their system, and they began the test as the shift changed at the emergency management agency there in Hawaii.
Which seems on the surface like this is a bad idea because people are just getting there. They're sort of settling in.
Right.
Other people are thinking about going home. But the reason for doing that is to make sure if something does happen during a shift change that you're ready.
Exactly. People handle the change or handle the alert efficiently, promptly, and so forth. Anyway, this test should have involved the emergency alert system and the wireless emergency alert, but no warning sirens. At 8:07 a.m., a warning test was triggered statewide by the state warning point, HIEMA. But again, this test didn't say it was a test. It said, this is not a drill.
Right.
At 8:10 a.m., the state adjutant Major General Joe Logan checked and validated to U.S. Pacific Command that there was no missile launch. And the Honolulu Police Department was notified that there was no missile launch, in spite of the alert that had gone out 3 minutes earlier.
And President Trump was told.
Right.
He was out doing something else at the time. I think he was on the golf course. And he was, not that he was, dodging his job. He's I think he's a very busy man and he works really hard. And he does a lot of business on the golf course.
He does. He does.
So he was probably working on the golf course and he was told, this has happened in Hawaii. There's nothing going on. It's just a drill.
Right. North Korea did not launch against Hawaii.
Exactly, because this could have gone sideways really fast.
Sure. So anyway, as you pointed out, it took until...
It was 38 minutes.
Yeah, 8:45 a.m. After getting authorization from FEMA Integral Public Alert and Warning System, HIEMA issued a civil emergency message, which then, again, 38 minutes later, after people had been panicking, running for cover, abandoning their cars and streets and roads to find a place to hide from, duck and cover, put your head between your knees and
kiss your bum goodbye.
That they sent out this message. But, again, a lot of people were at that point panicking and not really checking social media to find out if there was or if they were hiding someplace. Maybe, they were somewhere where a phone didn't get a signal or something.
Well, anyway. Exactly. Here's the other thing. The system did not have in place a way to recall the alert. In other words, you couldn't just say, oh, we're really sorry that was sent out incorrectly.
Right.
It didn't have an automatic way to do that. In other words, they had to, by hand, encode the phone numbers of everybody they had to send a text to.
Really?
So it took a while to do it, and they still didn't get it out to everybody. So it's possible, I suppose, that there are still people hiding somewhere in fear of their lives.
Yeah.
That would really, I grew up in the same system. I grew up in a nuclear age where we were told that you needed to have a bomb shelter in your backyard if you were in, I grew up in the 50s and 60s and it was Cold War to the max. And that Conelrad system, which is what the EMS system was called back then, was every time those tones were played and that little, signal came on your television, you sort of tensed. Because we were so told that at any minute the Russians are going to launch against us.
I remember
that we lived in fear.
We had civil defense drills in the 60s and 70s at the public school I attended in Chicago. But I don't know that kids today are raised with that same sort of understanding. We're not living in in that same with that same mindset anymore. And even with all of the tension going on with North Korea, which is probably why the Hawaiians were so. Those who got the message and were panicked by it were so unnerved because Kim Jong-un is talking a big game. From his perspective, I can understand why he's doing it. I mean, he's noticed that nations that have a nuclear program, like say Pakistan, have not been invaded by the United States. So, he's plus, I think the Chinese find some value in using North Korea as a junkyard dog, but still, even with the the tough talk from Kim Jong-un, I don't think most Americans, not our kids and our grandkids, don't have that same sense of fear about what might happen if the Russian premier decides to push that button, or the president now.
Oh, I know. When I was a kid in grade school on up, we were trained to understand what a nuclear blast would do to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, we literally in science class, we were told, okay, if it went off here, and we were told it would go off there because we grew up near the Jefferson Proving Ground, which was where artillery was tested, and my dad worked there. And we were told that because it was in our backyard, that was one of the many targets that would be hit in the United States. They had to take us out. Mm-hmm. So we were essentially considered ourselves toast. Yeah. And we were taught what different types of bombs would do to us, what radiation would do to us from this bomb or that. Cobalt bomb would do this, an implosion would do this, a hydrogen bomb would do this. I mean, all of those things were part of our science course. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And along with that, we were scared into, you'd better tell your parents to build a bomb shelter. Yeah. I remember going to my dad and begging him to build a bomb shelter. And of course it was expensive.
Yeah. Not something that a family that was just, struggling to make ends meet would be able to just say, okay, write a check and have a contractor come out with a backhoe and start digging.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, it was either that or, I thought, okay, bomb shelter, pool. We couldn't have afforded either one of those. Yeah. But, as a kid, you imagine that, okay, well, it can't be that expensive.
Yeah. Dad will figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, that explains a lot of the storylines on some of the programs that we watched from the late 50s, early 60s. Twilight Zone had a number of apocalyptic episodes dealing with the fear of what might happen. There was the episode where the guy was prepared and had that bomb shelter in his basement, and all of his neighbors had kind of laughed at him and joked with him until suddenly reports came over the radio that missiles were inbound, and suddenly they all wanted to break down his door, and they wound up tearing the door off the shelter. And then it turned out it was a false alarm.
And that would have happened in Hawaii. I mean, had that sort of that same mindset been in place in Hawaii. And I'm not saying that we need to go back to those days of being constantly paranoid, but I do think that children should, young people need to understand that we live in a world that is dangerous. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't take a whole lot, because if you look at Bible prophecy, it's clear that things like this are coming.
Right. And having said that, then the idea of preparing for having to be self-sufficient for a while is not crazy. I mean, that's just wisdom. It's not being paranoid. It's being prudent.
Oh, I think so too. And it isn't just preparing for that nuclear blast or the missile attack that will eventually be coming at some point in the future, not necessarily to, a location near you, but there are people who will live through that. But earthquakes, storms, floods. I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen to you. Electricity going out. Well, right now we've got snow falling, and we could just as easily have a blizzard. Mm-hmm. In where we live, it's unlikely, but we could, because when the day we moved here, we had a blizzard.
Yeah, 6 inches of snow, which is nothing
on top of ice.
On top of ice, right. Yeah, we were blessed to have gotten our way
and
here.
That kind of thing can take down power lines, and suddenly you're without power. And if you are without power in cold weather, then you have to find a way to survive.
Yeah. Keep water going. In our case, because our water pump depends on electricity, but also to stay warm enough to keep from freezing.
Right.
Right now I'm just thinking though that Doug and Joe Hagman are probably laughing hysterically. I mean, they live in Erie, Pennsylvania, which has gotten hit by 5 feet of snow during that recent storm.
They're going, you people,
half an inch, and you go.
Break out the shorts. It's warm weather there.
Move to the Ozarks, Doug. Joe,
Doug,
come on down. The water's fine.
Oh, well, it is. Actually, the water is fine. But anyway, that's taking place. Hawaii's trying to figure out how to deal with the aftermath of this. The FCC is investigating.
Yeah, as they should. The big question to me is why is it so much more difficult to send out an all clear than it is to send out the initial mistaken
That's
warning?
What I'm saying. Yeah. There was nothing in place to automatically rescind that.
Oops. Yeah, the one cancellation notice that they sent only prevented the initial alert from being rebroadcast to phones that had been out of range or turned off when the initial warning was sent. So someone who was on a plane that just landed at Honolulu, say a hiker out of distance of a cell tower, somebody who was asleep and had the phone turned off. You turn your phone on at 8:15, you would not have gotten that notice because of the cancellation warning that was sent out. Theoretically, anyway.
Theoretically, exactly. So, well, it's hard to say what's going to happen.
It is funny because progressives are already out there. In fact, I tweeted this last night. Jamie Lee Curtis, okay, look, as an actress, I like your work, but as a political commentator, you're an idiot. Saying that this is Trump's fault, this is on him because of the fear that he's caused and created. I'm sorry, Donald Trump had nothing to do with the error that took place at HIEMA, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency.
Nothing whatsoever to do with that. I mean, if there's anything suspicious about this at all, take a look at the state of Hawaii. It's a left-leaning state.
It's controlled by Democrats. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, and speaking of earthquakes, by the way, just a quick note, Peru was hit by a 7.1 magnitude just off the coast earlier today. 2 people at least killed, and some damage that has taken place in the nation there. So people are, 65 people injured. This took place just off the coast of Peru at about 4 o'clock local time today, Sunday.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of prophecy, there's a story that I just find really interesting. It's at the Express in the UK, which is a site that sometimes uses hyperbole. I'll just say that. But sadly, this is the kind of thing that's starting to paint those of us who pay attention to Bible prophecy and consider it valid, painting us with a very broad brush, making us look like idiots. It's, and I won't name the pastor, but it's dealing with someone who, and I don't know, you can name him if you want to, but it's someone who's connecting Bible prophecy as explained by fundamentalist prophecy-believing Christians, conflating it with those who believe in Nibiru.
Yeah, well, I'm going to name him. His name is David Meade, and he is a guy who wrote a book that last year said that beyond he was convinced that beyond any doubt that planet Nibiru would hit in, what was it first? August and then October or something like that.
Well, he's saying now that in April, the rapture is going to happen and that Nibiru is going to show up.
Yeah. Well, he's, you're right. I think the Express and other news sites that are reporting on his reporting on his claim are happy to do it because it does make Bible-believing Christians look like idiots.
Exactly. If he weren't including the rapture in this and just saying that Nibiru is coming back, this year, he might get play, but it wouldn't be nearly as sensationalized. By saying, shadow of a doubt, start World War III, North Korea, rapture in April. All of those words all run together in that same title. Right.
Book The End of Days, Planet X and Beyond. Back in September.
I love it. He says, notice I'm not setting an exact date or time, only a season of time.
Right.
Saying April of this year is pretty, it narrows it down quite a bit.
Well, and that's really being disingenuous because he's the guy who said that Planet Nibiru was going to hit on September 23rd of last year. So he does date set.
Yes, he does.
So it's, this is, and then of course he changed his date to October once September 23rd came and went. Here's the funny thing. Because I just sort of vaguely remember all of the angst about, was it September 21st or 23rd, whatever the date was last year, 23rd. I remember Bob Ulrich of Prophecy Watchers telling us that registrations for their conference, which was the second weekend in October last year, really surged after September 23rd came and went. There were people who waited to see whether something was going to happen on the 23rd before they bought the tickets to the prophecy conference.
Oh, I know.
Really?
Yeah, well, anyway. So that.
Yeah. But Time Magazine has a report from last September. So, if you're seeing this gentleman's report and concerned at all about it,
don't be,
because September 25th of 2017, Time Magazine reported, despite David Meade's claims that the world would end on September 23rd, Earth appears to be spinning on just fine. But don't worry, Meade says he just got the date wrong. Doomsday will actually happen in October. Well, here we are in January. Now he's moved the date back to what's the date?
April of 2018.
April of 2018.
He says because the year 5777 ends at the end of March of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again,
I thought that the year began in the fall.
Well, on the Jewish calendar, it does.
That's what he's talking about. 5777. That's a Jewish year.
First, well, the Jewish calendar actually has 2 New Years. There's the one in the fall in Tishri and in the month of Nisan as well, but spring and fall.
Yeah, well, anyway. So moving on.
Yeah, Nibiru is, that's a bunch of fake news. And when you get there only by going through Zechariah Sitchin, and Sitchin drew a lot of his stuff out of the occultist teachings of Blavatsky. So just don't go there. Nibiru, if you understand anything about Sumerology, and Nibiru is one way to transliterate the ancient Sumerian city of Nippur, which was the holy city of their chief god Enlil. It is not a planet; it was a city. That's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's and the ironic thing is when we talked about Meade and his predictions back last fall on Skywatch TV on some of the daily updates, got some email from people who got upset. Well, how do you know?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at this. The year 5778 began in September of last year.
Okay, all right.
It's Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of their new calendar year.
That's right, head of the year. Okay, right, correct. Yep.
So anyway, he's just wrong on so many levels.
8 up.
Well, anyway, to another story, if you want to, and we are not fear-mongering. We do not want you to get that idea, because all we're really trying to do is tell you what's out there. We're just trying to point out signs and seasons to you, stories that are in the news that relate to Bible prophecy and the interpretation of where we are in the timeline. But there's no reason to panic because the Lord is still in control.
Amen.
Now,
Amen.
With that in mind, Erdogan has worked out a deal. Mind you, Erdogan, who wants to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, has worked out a deal with Sudan. And he has worked out a deal that allows him to control a coastal area of Sudan right across from Jeddah.
Mm-hmm. And Jeddah is one of the main economic areas of the Saudis. Mm-hmm. So it's not their capital. Capital obviously is Mecca. Medina is another holy city. Or no, I'm sorry. Derek, think. What is the capital city of Saudi Arabia? I've only talked about it like half a dozen times in the last year. Saudi Arabia. It's not Mecca. It's not Medina. It's not Jeddah. It is Riyadh.
Very good, honey.
Yeah. Well, I had to look it up.
That's okay.
It's like we talked about on Sci Friday the other day. It's like, Derek doesn't actually know anything. He just knows how to look stuff up. So.
But you know what? That's so true. Honestly, honey, you know a lot of stuff, and you remember things that I'm amazed by. But anyway, this deal that's been worked out is very concerning to Egypt, and I'm sure it's concerning to Saudi Arabia as well. Erdogan would love to return to those days, the thrilling days of yesteryear.
Yes, return with us now.
When the Ottomans were in charge of everything.
Right.
You were just essentially a satellite nation, a state that sent all of your taxes, everything to Constantinople.
Mm-hmm. That was the reason for the founding of the Muslim Brotherhood back in 1922, founded as a response to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire.
Which was collapsing in the 19th century. It's one of the reasons that I like to write in that time period, because it's sort of leading everything up to the last days. Right.
It provides a real rich backdrop against which to write. I mean, the Ottomans were still wealthy, but it was with the sick old man of Europe is how they referred to it.
That's a really good way to put it, and essentially propped up by France and Great Britain, and to a certain extent Russia. They were all trying to figure out who's going to get control of what.
Yeah. Well, Jeddah is the largest seaport on the Red Sea. I didn't realize that. It's population about 4 million people. It is a commercial center for the Saudi kingdom. And having a Turkish seaport directly opposite, a naval base directly opposite, has got to be concerning to the Saudis. I mean, we Americans, and I'm, including myself in this characterization, don't know enough about the political alliances and the divisions in that part of the world. We think, okay, Sunnis and Shias, okay, we got that. They don't like each other. Well, yeah, but the Turks are Sunni, and so are the Saudis. But there are divisions within Sunni Islam and Shia Islam as well. And the Sunnis and we also don't understand the ethnic divisions either. Turks are not Arabs.
Right.
And they're not, neither one of those are Persian, and they're not Kurds, So, those are all different. Right. Yeah, I see what you did there. So that is something that we need to understand a little better if we're going to try to make sense out of what's happening in that part of the world. But the Turks, especially under the group led by Erdogan, would love to see the Ottoman Empire return. And of course, the Saudis wouldn't be happy about giving up control over Islam's holy sites with a renewed caliphate.
Well, here's another thing that's interesting about this. The Erdogan signed a deal with the leaders in Sudan and said that he would not only, in exchange for being given control of Suakin Island, which is that big area just sort of on the coast opposite Jeddah, that they would build a hospital, free trade zone in Port Sudan, grain silos at different locations, a university, power stations, new airport for Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and shipyards for military and civilian ships. In other words, they probably will be building a military base in that area. Question is, where's all the money coming from? There's speculation that it's coming from Qatar.
Well, that's interesting because the Qataris are not happy with the Saudis. That was a recent development too. Let me see if I can. Yeah, the relations between the Saudis and the Qataris are not good. Oh, yeah, just an announcement here just last week. Qataris alleged they were prevented from performing the pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia.
And here's another one. The Qatari sheikh is being detained in the United Arab Emirates. Why is he being detained there? The royal family. Controversial member of Qatar's royal family says he's being detained in the UAE, according to...
Well, last summer, and again, it's been a while since I reported on this, so the facts aren't top of mind, but last summer there was a blockade imposed on Qatar by Saudi Arabia, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Bahrain. Bahrain basically just does whatever the Saudis tell them to do.
Yeah.
But they cut off diplomatic ties at the same time. They severed diplomatic relations because they accuse Qatar of funding extremist groups and of being too friendly with Iran. Now, the Qataris say, no, that's not the case. But if I'm not mistaken, Al Jazeera, isn't Al Jazeera funded by the Qataris?
In part, yeah. I think there's part of it. Funding comes from here, too. Qatar has filed a new complaint, by the way, with the UN, reporting a second violation of its airspace by a United Arab Emirates jet in recent weeks. They're calling it a military airlift, the UAE is, and as traveling from UAE to Bahrain. They entered the Qatar airspace on January 3rd. This is a very bad deal. So, yeah. It's interesting, if indeed the money is coming from Qatar, that you have to ask, what's going on? What challenges to the Saudi Arabia are taking place?
Let's see. Al Jazeera. Who owns Al Jazeera Media Network? That is a Middle Eastern multinational multimedia corporation. The chairman is Sheikh Hamad bin Tamer Al Thani, who is whom? He is the chairman of the based in Qatar. Okay, right. That's what I thought. Yeah, Al Jazeera is essentially a media outreach of the government of Qatar.
It's sort of like, yeah.
So the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, which is the Saudis and basically the Sunni nations around the Persian Gulf. Kuwait is included in there, Egypt, Oman, Abu Dhabi, etc. All part of this group. But last summer they had kind of a dust up with the Qataris, and not quite sure what's going on there, but some accusations that they were funding groups in Syria that were cooperating with the goals of the Iranians in Syria. And So, yeah, but this is a big deal. A Qatari royal being held in the UAE against his will.
You're right. Last summer, Saudi Arabia insisted that Al Jazeera be shut down. Called the 2017 Qatar diplomatic crisis.
Huh. Interesting. Iran has invited Qatar to its meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The countries blockading Qatar are members of the OIC, but they also have strained diplomatic relations with Iran.
Now, if Qatar sounds familiar to you, it may be due to recent stories, but it also might be that you're remembering that the Gulf War, we staged a lot of our military campaigns out of Qatar. But no longer.
Yeah.
We've not been on good terms with Qatar for a while.
Well, this is really interesting. Again, the Saudis and the Iranians are more or less engaged in a proxy war for dominance, Sunni versus Shia dominance in the Middle East, and then, around the world, of course. But the Turks would love to, as we said, restore the caliphate, at least that group within Turkey led by Erdogan, who's got these delusions of grandeur.
More of a Muslim Brotherhood thing.
Yeah, and so Qatar may see some benefit in having a big brother who's willing to help them out in their time of trouble with the Saudis and the Egyptians, and Turkey obviously sees some benefit to getting a foothold in the Red Sea, and boy, within striking distance of the big economic center of the Saudi kingdom, Jeddah. So
Well, while we're talking about this, I'm going to let you address this because this is something I think you spoke with Colonel Bob McGinnis about, and that is the drones that attacked Syria.
Yeah, that's another really interesting development over the last week. Last week, Saturday, it was reported that Russia took down about 13 drones that had been launched against its base at naval base at Tartus, and then there's an air base nearby with a name that's got too many consonants, not enough vowels, so I won't even try to pronounce it. It looks like Hamanamanam.
Hamiman?
Yeah.
Hamiman?
Something like that.
H-M-E-I-M-I-N.
I'll just say Manamana.
I'm sorry.
But, well, no, I'm being facetious.
Well, because we sorry, but this isn't something we're good at.
No, and transliterating from Arabic to English isn't consistent either. But again, there are consonants packed close together that we don't normally see in English at the beginning of it. And you don't see very many words that begin with H and an M.
Right.
So Hamayanem is probably correct. Anyway, no injuries, no damage reported, but these drones were loaded with explosives, and the Russians were able to bring them down. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry said there was an American P-8 Poseidon electronic surveillance communications plane that was flying over the Eastern Mediterranean at the time of the attack. The implication there is that this plane was coordinating these drones, that the drones were being guided by global positioning, and that it required some sophistication in order to do this. Sophistication that rebels in Idlib province, which is in northern Syria, west of Aleppo, from which the drones were launched. A level of technical development that the rebels don't have.
Right.
Now, Colonel McGinnis said, well, maybe not. We've been supplying a lot of weaponry to those rebels. These are, alleged moderate rebels. We use the word moderate in air quotes. We've been supplying them with weaponry and equipment for a long time. We had with really, really lousy success. That was the famous program. We spent like $500 million and, managed to get 4 or 5 soldiers to the battlefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous. But Colonel McGinnis said he wasn't surprised that Russia made the accusation. I mean, they are, this is an information war as much as anything else. If the Russians can accuse us of doing this and violating the peace, maybe there's some propaganda benefit to accusing us of doing something. And who knows? For all we know, here in the West, we did supply those drones to the rebels and did encourage them to launch against the Russians.
Well, the other thing is if there are drones that are capable of attacking these bases that are armed and ready to shoot, then what else is going to go on? I mean, honestly, this is a little concerning.
That's a bigger question, and that's something that he pointed out in the interview that is at Skywatch TV. You can find it at skywatchtv.com or the Skywatch TV channel on Roku.
Was that one of your
YouTube.
5 and 10?
Yeah, it was one of the 5 and 10 updates on the mobile app as well, Skywatch TV's mobile app. The fact that rebel groups have drones of this sort is disturbing because Bob said these drones aren't really that sophisticated. The Russians are making them sound more sophisticated than they really were. Yeah. But the fact that they had them and were able to get them into the vicinity of Russian airspace over these military bases is disturbing because
I'm sorry.
It's the kind of thing that may happen, not just over there, but it's the kind of thing that could happen here in the United States where drones are launched at political or military targets here inside the United States.
Yes, and here's the other thing that I found concerning about it is that the Russians were claiming that some of these drones were brought down by essentially taking over their electronics and crashing them.
Yeah. Well, that's doable. Again,
I know,
Colonel
but we
McGinnis,
don't
these
want
drones,
our expensive drones to be hackable.
Right. And that's why he said these drones weren't that sophisticated. Okay. When you look at them, some of them look as though they were wrapped with green duct tape. Yeah, Sam's back under his binky.
And steam-powered.
Cyberpunk. They looked really cool, but not very sophisticated. No, they do look like as they were wrapped with green tape in places, maybe to hold the bombs to them. I don't know. But these were not like Reaper or Predator drones, the really high-end drones that we use to launch missiles against targets. These were commercially available drones.
Yeah.
Where with a few $100 and a little modification, you could basically create something like this in your garage, which is disturbing enough because, again, I don't know how many government buildings here in the United States, especially when you get into smaller communities or smaller states, have protection against something like that. I mean, in Jeff City, I've been to the state capitol there. Do we have police around there with weaponry that could bring down a drone coming in from above with explosives on the state capitol?
That's a really good question. But, I mean, it's one thing to have a major city. It's another thing to be out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And some of the state capitals like Jefferson City, Missouri, it's not St. Louis even, And I don't know that St. Louis would be able to, if somebody wanted to crash something into the federal courthouse in St. Louis, I don't know that it could be stopped.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm looking for another story, and it's not really related to this one. It has to do with the BuzzFeed research.
Well, as long as we're talking about Russia, yeah, let's go to that story because I've got it here. From Russia with Blood is the title of one story, which was from BuzzFeed.com. This goes back to a story that we talked about on P.I.D. Radio some years ago about Alexander Litvinenko, who was a what was Litvinenko? He was a
spy, and
KGB.
He was investigating the death of a reporter who had been killed in an elevator, I think, a woman, and he had gone to speak with Boris. Oh, what was his last name? Berezhinsky,
I think. Let me check.
Berezovsky.
He was killed in 2006, and we did a couple of stories about Litvinenko. He was a former officer of the FSB, not the KGB, FSB, which is the successor. Rather, the FSB is the secret police, not intelligence.
But
FSB secret police.
It's the old KGB. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Berezovsky, Boris Berezovsky, a very, very wealthy man, oligarch who had moved to the UK, and Litvinenko went to visit him. He was poisoned by polonium.
Yes, polonium-110. We did a couple of stories on that on PID Radio some years ago.
We did, and apparently the investigating scientists and other folks who are gentlemen who have been involved in trying to figure out what really happened to Litvinenko, there are 14 deaths associated with this.
Right. And that's disturbing because obviously the Brits, just like we here in America, would not want Russian Secret Service operating with impunity on its soil.
No.
Yeah. Anyone who's watched MI5 would know that.
Well, exactly. You'd know that just walking down the street.
Or Spooks, if you're watching this in the UK.
That's very true. Love that show.
Yeah. Berezovsky was the name of the oligarch.
The most recent death, is that Scott Young? No, maybe that's one of the early ones. But there was a gentleman, a scientist, who just recently died, and BuzzFeed has been looking into this for a couple of years now. And in fact, an MP, a member of the House of Lords,
yeah,
one of the peers, is calling for an investigation into this, and he is challenging the conservative government. So it's an opportunity to do some political grandstanding. But,
sure.
What isn't used for those things these days. But I think it's worth looking into, figuring out exactly what's taking place. This is coming at a time when Russia has been sailing its ships through the English Channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sort of like, just thumbing their noses at London. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of showing off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This Lord Rooker is the peer who wrote to Theresa May to ask about these 14 suspected assassinations. And again, this is based on reporting by BuzzFeed News. The report from BuzzFeed, which I'll link in the show notes, is titled, as I said, From Russia with Blood. The most recent, or at least one of the higher profile assassinations, is the state scientist who was stabbed to death after he connected the Kremlin to the assassination of Litvinenko.
And here's the thing.
The gentleman who did this research was named Dr. Matthew Puncher.
Yes. And here's the thing. Most of these, what we would deem suspicious deaths, have been instantly declared to be accidents or suicide, including the guy who had stab wounds from 2 different weapons, numerous stab wounds.
Yeah. Yeah. The article at BuzzFeed says Puncher's body was found riddled with stab wounds, weeks after his nuclear research helped a judge determine that the KGB defector, or actually FSB, again, the successor to the KGB, Alexander Litvinenko had been assassinated in London by Russia's Secret Service. Again, Litvinenko died in 2006. This story coming to light in 2018. Dr. Puncher was found dead in 2016. So this Litvinenko death is still sending ripples out into the water 10 years after he died.
Yeah.
Now, what was about Litvinenko that made him such an enemy of the state? After he defected in 2000.
There's a documentary about that.
Yeah. Litvinenko wrote 2 books, Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within, and Lubyanka Criminal Group. And in those books, he accused the Russian Secret Services, KGB, of staging the Russian apartment bombings and other terrorist acts in order to bring Vladimir Putin to power. The apartment bombings were a series of explosions in September of 1999 in Moscow and a couple of other cities. Almost 300 people died, more than 1,000 were injured. And the bombings, along with the war in Dagestan, the province of Dagestan, which is mostly Islamic, led the country into the Second Chechen War.
Yes.
And Putin's handling of the crisis boosted his popularity, and this led him to power. And Putin has been in power since, well, for basically the last 18 years in Russia. The Second Chechen War ran from August of 1999 to May of 2000.
There are several documentaries on this murder, this assassination, to be honest with you, of Litvinenko. I know I've seen one before, and I can't remember if one of these is the one that I watched. There are many books out there on it, so do your own research. But if you've never heard of it before, it's a fascinating look into Cold War politics and the kind of things that honestly go unreported oftentimes here in the West.
Dagestan is in far southwestern Russia. It is, if I'm looking at this correctly, it's on the border of the Caspian Sea, or the shore of the Caspian Sea, just north of the nation of Georgia. Again, mainly Islamic, or heavily Islamic. It's in the Caucasus. And there are groups there that are looking for independence. And a group there that was blamed for those apartment bombings, the Islamic Jamaat of Dagestan, which is a Wahhabist group, so a Salafist group trying to rebel against Russian occupation, I guess. So anyway, Litvinenko wrote a couple of books, blamed Russian security services for the apartment bombings that were blamed on the Muslims of Dagestan, specifically that group, the Islamic Jamaat of Dagestan, and that led to a war in the second war in Chechnya. Suddenly, in 2006, Litvinenko gets sick, dies. It's determined that he was poisoned with a radioactive substance called polonium. Was it polonium-110?
I think so. The assassination of Anna Politkovskaya was what Litvinenko was looking into.
Oh, right. The Russian journalist.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was referred to earlier. She died. She was shot dead in an elevator of her apartment block in central Moscow in 2006.
Yeah. Polonium-210. Polonium-210. The reason I was thinking 110 is because we did a program a few years back when Nancy Pelosi was made the first female Speaker of the House. And we titled the episode Polonium-110. No, it's polonium-210 is the radioactive isotope that was used to poison Litvinenko.
And that's something that I think you can harvest out of smoke detectors.
Yep. Small quantities are in smoke detectors.
And it doesn't take much.
Right.
He was, it was in his tea, is what they think.
Yeah. And there's no cure. Once it's in your system, you're basically a dead man.
Exactly. Yeah. Very interesting. I need to go back. You know, back in the day, in the history of P.I.D. radio, back in the day, we have discussed so many things that have taken place in the world of politics and crypto politics, and this is one of those things that sort of gets forgotten. Yeah. We get so focused on what's going on here in the United States and some of the stupid political stuff. What did President Trump say today that was ill-advised or crude? That we forget that there's a lot going on in other parts of the planet that are potentially life-changing. I mean, as Colonel McGinnis said during our discussion the other day, we need to remember Russia's not our friend. They are building up weapons that they could use potentially to strike against the United States. Yes, we have some areas where we should deconflict, some areas where we have shared interests. And we should be talking to them about that, but we should never, ever forget that Vladimir Putin is all about Russia, and Russia's goal, Russia's interests don't always align with our own. And, talking to them and just trying to be nice is not necessarily the way forward for the United States. Right. Now, going out of our way to annoy Russia and provoke Russia, I think, is also really stupid, as Hillary Clinton during the campaign was saying. We need a no-fly zone over Syria. Really? I mean, Russian planes have been invited there. Russian Air Force has been invited there by Assad. We're going to tell them that. Yeah, that means shooting them down. What for what gain? What purpose there? That was just flat stupid. But again, the world is a dangerous place, and we should never ever look at it through rose-colored glasses. Look, we'll all just say, hold hands and kumbaya. No, I'm sorry. The world, the human heart is not going to ever allow that to happen. No, I had not realized that Politkovskaya had been previously. Perhaps there had been an assassination attempt on her life. She was investigating the Beslan school crisis. Remember that in 2004? Oh, yeah. And she fell violently ill and lost consciousness after drinking tea. The Beslan school siege, wasn't that blamed on Chechen separatists? Yes. And she'd written a book about the Second Chechen War called Life in a Failing Democracy, Putin's Russia. So she'd been taking aim at Putin's presidency for a while. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, the Beslan school massacre. 385 people died. 1,100 people were taken hostage, including 777 children. Yes. This is in North Ossetia, which is on the border between Russia and that border zone between Russia and Georgia. One of those breakaway regions. Yeah. Wow. And again, the militants were Islamic, mostly Ingush and Chechen. Ingush is what? Ingush. I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, they inhabit the Russian Republic of Ingushetia, which is next door to
Ossetia.
Okay.
Predominantly Sunni Muslims.
The European Court of Human Rights in 2017 criticized Russia for not taking sufficient precautions before the event, for using excessive lethal force when concluding the siege, which violated the, quote, right to life. It's hard to know what you're going to do in a situation like that where you've got all sorts of teachers and school children who are held by gunmen.
Yeah. Yeah, all of those, I'm looking at a little map here in all of those areas. Dagestan, if you're going from the Caspian Sea west, just north of Azerbaijan and Georgia, it's Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, and then North Ossetia.
Mm-hmm. Good
boy, oh boy.
Yeah, it's so easy. I mean, honestly, we've been doing PID radio for a long, long time, since March of 2005. Yeah. And so we've reported on a lot of events, but it's easy to forget. Something this huge, you would think, we'll never forget that. But this was a big deal. This was like 2001. This was like 9/11 to them.
Yeah, this took place on September 1st of 2004, traditional start of the Russian school year. So this is just before we started doing PID radio, which was March of 2005.
But we talked about it. I do remember that. And we definitely talked about breakaway regions and also about, we definitely talked about Litvinenko. But boy.
Yeah. And meanwhile, here in the United States, I wanted to touch on this just because it's crazy, but at the same time, it shows how the world is going to respond to people who identify as Christian in the world in the years ahead. Most of our listeners probably have heard about the engineer at Google, James Damore, who was fired for writing an op-ed piece that was circulated internally at Google last year, basically saying, look, men and women are fundamentally different. We have different...
you think?
Yeah, not only do we have different physical characteristics, but we have different likes and dislikes.
Our brains work differently.
Our brains work differently. This is not... This shouldn't even be controversial to say, and yet with progressives, it is. I mean, we're supposed to believe that we are all fundamentally the same. We are all... and that is just observably and demonstrably untrue. There is no scientific or biological reason to believe that is true, and yet anyone who says different, says, hey, maybe the reason there are more men in tech is because men tend to like that kind of work more than women.
Yeah.
It's not because of institutionalized gender bias against women in the STEM curricula. It's because, that's what science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Right. It's just because women tend not to gravitate towards those careers as frequently as men. And yet the tech companies in Silicon Valley like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Twitter, et cetera, are trying to force into this round hole a square peg that says men and women are all the same, and we should be represented in equal numbers in our companies. Otherwise, it's bad. And anyone who says different is guilty of bad think, and therefore we need to hound them. Not just say, maybe you need to think differently. No, we need to hound them out of the company. This lawsuit that Damore has filed makes some claims, which even if half of these are true, are really disturbing because it shows that Google, which is arguably the most powerful technology company on the planet, is no longer about making products for consumers to integrate with our devices. It's a cult because there are people internally at Google who, according to and I'm quoting now from an article at The Federalist where the author went and selected out 19 different little tidbits to give examples about the work environment at Google. Number 2, don't hire white men. One employee actually suggested within Google a moratorium on hiring white, cis, heterosexual, abled men who aren't abuse survivors.
What?
In other words, in order to make Google
I know
more
what
diverse,
it means.
Yeah, I know it's crazy talk, but this is and suggestions like this instead of saying, well, look, maybe we should hire the most capable candidates for positions that we need to fill.
Exactly, because we want to have the best products we can possibly provide.
Right, but that is not the case. There are... discourage them throughout the industry. If we really care about diversity in tech, and this is a quote from a post that's part of this lawsuit, we don't just need to chase serial offenders. In other words, those who believe that we should hire just the best people, regardless of skin color or gender identity or whatever. We need to discourage them throughout the industry. We should be willing to give a wink and a nod to other Silicon Valley employers over terminable offenses. In other words, if you don't think the way you're supposed to think, not only are we going to fire you here at Google, we're going to make sure you never work in this industry again. Another internal memo cited, I'm a queer, blank, non-binary trans person that is bleeping sick and tired of being told to open a dialogue with people who want me dead. We're at a point where the dialogue we need to be having with these people is, if you keep talking about this bleep, I will hurt you.
Wait a minute. So this person is essentially threatening those who disagree with him or her.
Exactly. They have become the Nazis that they claim they hate. In other words, there is another internal memo that was cited that basically said, if you hold these views, if you are a white heterosexual male and don't embrace this all-inclusive policy that we need to give preferential treatment to people of color, to people who are non-binary. In other words, they don't identify as male or female, people who, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't believe that we need to do this, then not only will I refuse to work with you, and apparently there's an internal blacklist at Google where if you don't hold right-think, you can be blacklisted internally. And this memo from one of these, like a manager internally said, not only will I not work with you, I'll make sure you don't work with other people, even if it affects my project's quality and the project that you're working on.
Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. Well, look, bottom line, money is going to talk eventually. But this leads to one of the shows that we saw in Black Mirror, which is a television show about an anthology series all about looking at the dystopia that we're creating through technology. And the show was about up-liking or voting people online and how that rules their lives in this storyline that you wouldn't get a loan, you wouldn't get the apartment you want, you wouldn't get the right boyfriend. Nothing would go well for you if your popularity dropped below a certain point average.
Right. And your popularity...
I'm sorry, you're just a 3.2.
Yeah, I can't offer you this apartment.
Yeah, you can't even get in this line. I'm sorry, you need to go in the other line.
Yeah, can I be put on standby for the next flight? Oh, no, sorry, you got to be a 4.2. And
I'm sorry, you just argued with me. I've just
dinged you, giving you a 1-star review and, double bonus points because you're doing it inside a secure zone here at the airport.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was another anthology show that we've been watching this past week at Amazon Prime, Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams, and there's an episode.
Very good anthology series. A couple of shows that have some inappropriate scenes that they didn't need, but overall the shows are really watchable. But for adults.
One of the episodes basically takes that concept even further along the lines of this article from the Federalist, which I'll also put in the show notes because you need to see some of this stuff. It's just insane.
But as insane as it seems, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have even been having this conversation. The fact is that we have moved along that path so quickly, and it's going to get faster and faster.
Right. And the influencers in technology at Google and at Twitter and at Facebook are so convinced of their righteousness in doing this that they look at people like you and me as dinosaurs.
Yeah.
That we are holding outmoded views of what you believe gender is binary. I mean,
I hate to tell you this, sir, madam, whatever you are, you have XX or XY. That's what's in your genes. Probably.
Yeah. Well,
there are very few exceptions to that rule.
That's very true. But inside Google, according to this, this is item number 1 on this insane tidbits from Google list, an employee who identifies as, quote, a yellow-scaled wingless dragonkin, end quote, and, quote, an expansive ornate building, end quote. An expansive ornate building, presented a talk at Google entitled Living as a Plural Being. at an internal company event. Living as a plural being, the presenter actually discussed how to address coworkers who have multiple identities. Examples of not okay etiquette include, quote, addressing any one headmate in particular because we're all listening, end quote.
Yeah, well,
so,
okay.
But the problem is, as you say, we've moved so quickly in this direction, and this is going to be the standard by which the world is being judged. In fact, this is how information is being curated on the internet. The stuff that actually gets to our eyes is being filtered through people who think like this.
Yes, I know. There are people. And the thing to remember about this is that these people are loved. God loves them.
That is true.
He loves them just as much as he loves those who love him back. Because before anybody loved him back, he died for them. Mm-hmm. He died for everybody on this planet, and you get the option of accepting it or rejecting it. And so it's really easy to start lobbing invectives at people like this.
And I'm glad you brought that up because as you probably detected, I was starting to go down that path because it is
easy
so
to do.
Astonishing when you read this and realize, wait a minute, and these are the people who are throwing hate bombs at the likes of us.
I know, but the response shouldn't be to lob bombs back.
Exactly. That is exactly the wrong response. That's what the enemy wants us to do. Yeah. So I'm glad.
King
really
in Kodos or
glad,
somewhere.
Yeah, laughing. I'm glad you brought that up because you're correct. It's a difficult response. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it already instead of...
Yes, it has to be so frustrating for the angels who are standing at the throne and watching all of this, and those who have gone on, Paul and the others, who are standing at the railing and cheering us on. You do realize that you're supposed to love. Yeah. There's that Great Commission thing.
Yeah, gentleness and respect, remember?
Yeah, turning the other cheek.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do, and as you say, if it were easy, anybody could do it, but we are called to try to do that as much as, and on social media, it gets harder and harder. It's almost like the enemy is doing everything he can to trip us up.
Yeah, make it easier for us to hate than to love.
Yeah.
Well, again, I bring this up, and thank you for kind of changing my course there because I was getting into the spirit of the thing, but it was the wrong spirit to get into. Because you're right, that needs to be our reaction, because if we come at them with anger, we just make ourselves an obstacle, a stumbling block between them and the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I don't want that on my conscience. But just as a warning, though, just be prepared and get prayed up, because this is the mindset, the worldview of people who are going to come against us, because they're convinced that we are hateful. Mm-hmm. And we can very easily, as I demonstrated, reinforce their bias, confirm their bias by being angry about stuff like this. There is no observable or scientific rationale for their worldview, but God died for them. Jesus Christ died for them too.
Exactly. So, the irony of the viewpoint that there is a homogeneity across this spectrum, that everybody is in this big pool of we get to be, don't call me this, it's a non-binary world. You are taking away your God-given uniqueness.
Right. While at the same time, ironically, denying the one bit of homogeneity that is biblical, that exists, and that is that we are all created as image bearers of God.
Exactly.
We are created in His, regardless of our age, our color, our location,
yes,
or any disabilities or gifts we possess.
Yeah, we're all equal in Christ.
Yes, and created that status as an image bearer of God is something that applies to us regardless of who we are, how old we are, from the moment we draw the first breath until the moment we take the last one. That is a status that does not change ever.
Right.
So,
and understand too that God does not require someone who identifies as a yellow whatever dragonic. Whatever that person said, dragonkin.
Yellow-scaled, wingless dragonkin.
God loves that person exactly where that person is at this moment. Mm-hmm. That person is not required to make any changes for God to love him or her, whichever it is. And if that person decides, I want to talk to the Lord, He's going to listen. Mm-hmm. And the Lord will then start to work on that person's heart. It is not up to us to say, no, you have to get where I am on this journey.
Yeah.
And if you're not exactly where I am on this journey, then I'm sorry, but I just can't even talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, that's what it looks like when we make ourselves a stumbling block.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just remember, if it seems like the world is going crazy, remember it's not that. You're just going sane in a crazy world.
That is so true. Well, those of you living in Hawaii, if you send us a note letting us know how things are progressing there, what happened to your family when you received the push notice on your phone, how you reacted, we'd love to know. And it's not because we're trying to be, sort of, okay, we just want to follow this thread because we're just so fascinated by it. No, we want to know how you reacted as a believer.
Mm-hmm.
Were you prepared? Is this something that has sort of been a wake-up call for you? I've got to get prepared. We're not saying you have to go out and buy a generator and a whole bunch of things like that, but if you can put in some extra water, a little bit of extra food, some extra Bibles, some extra, books that help to teach the gospel message in simple language, maybe some towels, if somebody is, blankets. There are a lot of things you can get. Put together a little kit like that. Keep it in your car. Be ready to share the gospel through meeting the simple needs of people who are in distress.
Yep, that's wisdom.
Yeah, well, wisdom. I don't know that it's wisdom, but that's sort of what the Lord, as I get older, turning into an old crabby lady at that, the Lord is showing me, you know what? You don't know a whole lot. The older I get, the less I know.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we got a few things coming up. Of course, in March, the Hear the Watchman Conference in Dallas, March 22nd through the 25th. That's Grapevine, Texas. That's the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center.
It's a beautiful hotel.
It is.
You can get to there. Honestly, we're blessed to have a no-stop flight.
Yeah, nonstop flight from Springfield. So,
which
for us,
is unusual
it's
for being in such a
small community, right?
Out in the middle of nowhere.
We vote for having all conferences in Dallas, Denver, or Branson.
Wherever we get. Or
Charlotte. Yeah.
Places, or Atlanta.
Or Atlanta. Yeah. Places where we can fly without having to change plans.
Yeah. We don't like that.
Yeah. So
Chicago would work. We can get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
Certain times of the year we can get to certain areas in Florida too without having to change planes. But we don't like changing planes. We're crazy.
Yeah. Come to Branson.
That's it. That's the bottom line. Yeah. Come to Branson.
So, by the way, before I forget, the conference in Dallas, you can save $20 off the registration by using the promo code Gilbert20. That's Gilbert20. So use that promo code, and that will save you $20 on the registration. Great lineup for that one. Carl Gallups, L.A. Marzulli, who's got a really interesting press conference schedule. I haven't talked to him about it yet, so I'm not quite sure what is coming up, but February 2nd, I believe, they've got DNA results back on some of the elongated skulls that they've been testing.
Yeah. You should send him a note.
I plan to. Richard Shaw sent me a note the other day about that too. So I pray that protocols were followed, and I know that they've learned their lesson about through some of the.
Well, when he described to me how they collected the DNA samples, it sounded to me like that they did follow them.
Mm-hmm. So we shall see what that's all about. So anyway, certainly by March. They will have that information out, and so you'll have an opportunity to hear from LA directly about that. Again, $20 off, promo code Gilbert20. The website is hearthewatchmen.com. Then, of course, we've got the travel in May.
Mm-hmm.
We've been told there have been a few more cancellations, so there's spots open. If you've been thinking about the Year 70 Tour of Israel with Dr. Michael Heiser and us and about 100 people altogether, we'll see Mount Hermon. We'll see some of the other key sites. We'll be in Jerusalem on the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence.
That very day.
Yeah. So there are some spaces available. Don't delay. The website, and there'll be a link in the notes, but the website is lipkintours.com. That's Lipkin, lipkintours.com. And there are also apparently still a few slots left for the Gen 6, the True Legends expedition to Rome and Sardinia. That's Steve Quayle, Timothy Alberino, and us.
I know. Get to go through the Vatican with Steve Quayle and Alberino. I mean, that's a dream come true.
Yeah. And then some of the archaeological sites that we'll see, the Tombs of the Giants on Sardinia, which I'm finding has some connection to the research I'm doing for my forthcoming book. So really looking forward to that. That information you'll find at truelegendstheseries.com. That's truelegendstheseries.com.
Also, of course, in September is the True Legends Conference. Seriously, if you think you want to go, register now because they sold out within a month last year.
Speakers include Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, Professor Hugo de Garis.
Yeah.
If that name is not familiar to you, Google him.
You've done some interviews with him. Right.
Renowned expert on artificial intelligence. He was head of the Artificial Brain Institute at Xiamen University in China. He was featured in the documentary film Inhuman. A couple of quotes from him there. But I've done a couple of interviews with him over the past 10 years. And looking forward to it. And of course, Sharon K. Gilbert gets to speak as well.
I get to talk.
Yeah.
Yay.
So I will be in the front row.
Aww.
Cheering. Yay.
And by then your next book should be out, so we might have that with us.
Well, I think so. The tentative plan is to have it available by August. So, the last Clash of the Titans. Yeah. But yes, don't wait on that. There are some other big names that we cannot disclose at this time who will be speaking at the conference in September.
No, we know. We just can't disclose it yet because it's not official.
But go to gen6.com, that's GENSIX.com, and register for that. So
Also, book 3 of the Red Wing Saga is out at Amazon. So you can go to Amazon.com and type in The Blood is the Life. You'll find it there in Kindle and in print format. If you want to save a little bit of money and get some extra, bang for your buck, and you want to wait and get the deal from Skywatch TV Store, that big order has been placed and it should be in I'd say 8 weeks or so. We'll know. It all depends on what's in the queue ahead of us at the printing company. Yeah. But I will let you know as soon as those are available in the store and when they're available for pre-order, because he'll probably do that too.
Yeah.
He's likely to put, you know how Tom is. Throw in an RV package. Or something.
Yeah. So
that would be, if he ever throws in an RV, I am so ordering that. It'll say plus shipping. Shipping's $10,000.
Per wheel.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we've got an exciting year coming up, and we just are grateful that you're here and along for the ride. And so, again, check the notes at PIDradio.com for links to a couple of those articles that I mentioned before, because, there's some stuff going on out there that we need to pay close attention to. But remember, God's got it in control.
He does indeed.
Just keep praying that He grants us wisdom to know the best way to proceed.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Well, thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. PID Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is New Day Coming by Steve Grace, stevegrace.com. Our website is PIDradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, our books, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day